Доброе утро. Здравствуйте.
Good morning. My name is Ferdinand. I'm director of the OSCE Academy. For me, it will be much easier to speak English. If you don't mind that, let me switch to English.
We welcome you here at the OSCE Academy. It's always great to provide the platform for a lot of intellectually challenging and exciting things that are going on in the region. And of course, the regional climate policy in Central Asia is one of those things that is attracting most of the attention in every sector, you know, be it government, be it the NGO sector, be it activists, and be it scholars. And of course, we are very happy that Dr. Rakhat Sabyrbekov brought this to us, who has been with us for some time now. He's a little bit further away, about actually 10 time zones, but he keeps coming back, and we are very grateful for this. And we are also very grateful to the Jean Monnet Module on European climate policy, and personally to Gulnara Isaeva, who is the coordinator of the Erasmus Plus program in Central Asia, in Kyrgyzstan. And that, of course, it is a broad thing that we are massively benefiting, not only in this project, but we are also benefiting because some of our students are going for internships, some of our colleagues are learning a lot of things on exchanges with Erasmus Plus. I don't know how many of you know the let me say a few. The Academy was established back in 2002, so it has more than 20 years of history. It's the longest standing implementing partner of the OSCE. We have students from many countries, but always at least from 7, which are the 5 Central Asian states, Afghanistan and Mongolia. And we also have students from other participating states of the OSCE. We have currently Russian, Danish, British students in the classes, and next year we are going to have an Austrian, I think, and so on and so forth. So that's how it is. We are running 3 master's programs, one in politics and security. That was the first program that we started here more than 20 years ago. The economic governance and development program, which started a little bit less than a decade later. And then, of course, the master in human rights and sustainability that started in 2023, and the first students graduated just in February this year. The most important to mention by way of introduction for somebody who is not an expert on environmental issues, is just exposed to this coal mine-like weather in winter time in Bishkek, and the heat in the summer. So seeing how much it's getting worse, it's getting more and more troublesome. You know, we used to start winters in mid-November. Now there was no snow on the streets until the 10th of December. And the snow did not stay. It melted away twice in the middle of winter, which indicated that somebody who doesn't believe that there is global warming should actually not survive, irrespective of the function. Okay, so there is a lot of global warming, and we are very worried, and all predictions show that the situation is going to continue to deteriorate. It's important to see that this is, of course, a classical multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary area, because it requires knowledge of technological advancement. It requires activism to prevent that the worse versions would continue. And of course, it requires resources as well as knowledge and competence. And that's where scholars can make a difference. And of course, it is closely intertwined with governance issues. And of course, if states are new, and the Central Asian states are still relatively new, then of course this governance capacity, competence is building up, but it's not always immediately there. As a consequence, even if we want to achieve major changes, this can only be slow and incremental. And that's why it's very good to discuss these matters. And of course, there is also a little bit of good news. And the good news is that when we discuss environmental or energy issues as security issues or issues that the whole society should address, then at least we are not dealing with other things. We don't have a war in the region. The states are getting along okay with each other, which is a significant difference to that will benefit a lot from the exchange. We will learn a lot from other. I apologize in first part because intellectually less demanding things like begging donors to give us money. That's probably essential, but it's a little bit less intellectually demanding and challenging than being with you and enjoying the program and learning a lot from it. I'm very grateful for your presence. I'm also grateful to those who are with us online. And without further ado, I'm very happy to give the floor to Mrs. Gulnara Isaeva, who is the national coordinator of the Erasmus program in Kyrgyzstan. Thank you.
Доброе утро, уважаемые участники круглого.
Dear participants of the roundtable, I'm happy to welcome you on behalf of the EU Erasmus Plus office. Jean Monnet is the component of the program Erasmus Plus, and opportunities of Jean Monnet were provided by Kyrgyzstan back in 2013. Unfortunately, only Academy of OSCE was able to win the Jean Monnet only program. The universities apply 7 or 8 applications a year, but they haven't won. Taking this opportunity, I'm announcing the next tender in October. The participants, if you have a chance, apply for Jean Monnet, which is a flagship program of EU, which provides an excellent opportunity to acknowledge European experience and adapt it to our realities. You know, climate agenda is the issue of not only one country or one policy. It requires comprehensive regional approach. And today, I am so much grateful to the OSCE Academy for providing experts. Thank the coordinator of module, Jean Monnet, the staff member, for this expert work. I witnessed and observed excellent the observations. Therefore, also this module will be beneficial, but all the 5 Central Asian countries, and I'm calling you to continue. Don't stop. Apply for Jean Monnet, and we will be waiting for you. And finally, I would like to wish you productive deliberations, discussions, and get a European experience and to come to understanding which will be beneficial to all our nations for the sake of our survival and health. Thank you. Thank you very much. Paul, Gulnara, thank you very much for your warm words. Now I'm inviting our panelist speakers to take the seats. Yeah, before we start with our round, Kanat Saikal please join us. And before, while our speakers are taking their seats, I will make several technical announcements. First, we have a video and audio recording, Zoom translation, TV bridge. We have a simultaneous interpretation into Russian and English. You can switch. In Zoom, everything is available for online participants. If you have any questions, please use chat box. We will try to answer all your questions. Okay, thank you very much. Before I start, I will briefly share about the project. Perhaps it will be interesting that this project was launched a couple of years ago, and as Asel said, it was the first project in Kyrgyzstan or in the region, which won the Jean Monnet project. And thanks to our team in OSCE and managers of OSCE, we were able to implement it successfully. I will not give you the statistics what we have done, but when we started this project, the interest on climate in the region was not that big, but the studies and scholars were only a few of them, and but our small project contributed to improve the scientific capacity and in the education sector, dozens of working papers were published, different other documents. Last week, we published the first article of international edited Central Asian journal Climate Sustainability in this cities. If at the beginning, when we just started the course of climate agenda rated interest of 20-30 persons. Today, for the last course we announced, we got about 100 active people who, in fact, in spite of the heat, decided to work within this course. Therefore, we had to limit the space, but it means that interest to climate policy has been increasing in Central Asia. Climate policy in Central Asia, achievements, challenges, and opportunities for regional integration. The goal of this presentation is not to share about what's going on, but to open a general platform for discussions. Therefore, before we have very interesting speakers with very interesting topics, and I think it will be interesting to our participants online and offline. As our director Paul said correctly and repeated, many interesting things will be articulated by you. You know that Central Asia is one of the most vulnerable areas in the world to climate change. After Sahara disaster in Africa, and the question is. There is a climate policy in the region. This is one of the main issues covered by many scholars. What climate policy means in a broad sense. For instance, now the roads are built in Kyrgyzstan, other infrastructural programs, and the question related to climate, whether these projects take into consideration climate change impact. For instance, the asphalt had cover the roads, whether it can endure 50 degrees of heat. In Tajikistan 2 years ago, there were so-called flash floods. When there is a very big accumulation of water, the roads are broken. This is another issue. Regionally, the question is whether there is a climate policy. As a region, we experience the same impact of the climate change, to what extent our regional cooperation takes these issues into consideration in the areas of water, energy, etc. Therefore, we have the common issue for scholars, practitioners, policymakers, whether the climate policy covers these aspects. Nonetheless, probably many of those who work in the ministries and NGOs can say that a lot is being done on climate policy. We have achievements, national, all the Central Asian countries have their national strategies on climate policy within the Paris Agreement, different programs of green economy today, for instance. Saikal will share very interesting things done in the Ministry of Economy, Kyrgyz Economic University, etc. A lot of ambitious programs, for instance, Kazakhstan announced carbon neutrality till 2060. There are many ministries, agencies dealing with the climate policy, and at the same time, we see that there are, for instance, in Kazakhstan, there is the policy to increase renewable energy, and I think 2% of the total energy electricity generated is renewable. There are so many projects, initiatives to restore forest lands. ELD, GIZ implement so many projects there. But nonetheless, there are some issues which, as we can see in our science, researchers see clearly. Maybe you see when you encounter when we work in different regional programs or related to national policy, there is clear fragmentation of the climate policy between the countries, although the threats are the same, like drought, high temperature, shortage of water, but climate policy of each country is different. If you read NDC, Paris Agreement, even NDA. For Kyrgyzstan, these are 90s. For Kyrgyzstan, economic infrastructure. Countries have a high dependence of the fuel. You know that Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, these are countries which have big resources, but hydro energy countries, or for instance, hydro energy towers, Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan. If you look at the totally consumed sources of energy, coal, oil, and gasoline is in priority in terms of consumption, and it makes us to think later on. And I don't know whether my colleagues will agree with me or not. Maybe you disagree, but in our region we have insufficient involvement, engagement of the private sector. The state is involved in the climate policy, but the private sector and the civil society is not very involved to that extent. In the areas where there is big consumption of electricity, coal, people are not engaged in this policy, which creates concerns. And the last slide before we start our presentations of our speakers, in the literature very often these several points, 5 points, are revealed and discussed as opportunities for integration into the regional policy: energy integration, renewable energy sources, and regional networks, joint management of water and energy. Water, in fact, perhaps mostly discussed here in the region as one of the platforms for general climate policy, exchange of knowledge and technologies, because again, thanks to the social linguistic parameters, we can easily exchange technologies and knowledge in the region, developing regional climate agreements on different platforms, CARAC, ADB, World Bank, Paris Agreement, now together with the public agencies, supported by international agencies. They're trying to develop a regional approach to climate, and this is also what we can read in the literature. And my clicker is not working. I'm so sorry. Recommendations based on these studies is harmonization of national climate strategies, strengthening monitoring and evaluation of climate policy by scholars, building capacity, training of experts. This is a few, if in education and science, this is our main goal, one of the main goals, and joint regional environmental projects and investments. So this is another recommendation we see here. This is briefly what I wanted to share. 10 minutes now. We will have now speakers, and if you look at the agenda at 11:35, we will have questions and answers. Q&A. First, we will listen to all the speakers, and then we will discuss the questions. But if you have some burning, very immediate questions after each presentation, we can give time for Q&A. Now I would like to invite Madam Psychologist Namanova, Kyrgyz Economic University, and we will have a video from Andrea Bassa, founder of and the UNDSLR, the assistant professor of Stellenbosch University. Why Andrea Bassi? Why Psychologist Namanova? Because these are people who are standing at the source of green modeling in the Kyrgyz Republic on the basis of a system dynamics model, which several years ago, I remember, just started. Today, this model, in fact, is starts to integrate into economic planning and modeling of the Ministry of Economy of Kyrgyzstan. This is one of the examples where now academic exercise started in the past, and now it's a part of the policy. Thank you, Rakhat. Good morning, dear colleagues. In general, I would like to thank organizers for this opportunity to speak here. Today, the topic of my presentation is From Model to Policy, the experience of Kyrgyzstan in developing climate policies through system dynamics. As Rakhat has already mentioned, the fact that our region and Kyrgyzstan especially is vulnerable to climate change. Accordingly, the country has ambitious plans, but to achieve them, of course, we need a systemic approach. And in this sense, I mean, our promoting issues represent systemic dynamics. Why systemic dynamics? A couple of years ago, when I spoke there, here, I raised this issue. Systemic dynamics is, in general, opportunities to see the complex systems in development, how these parts of the system affect each other, and accordingly within our work. For instance, this work on green economy, you know, Minister of Economy will have a green economy modeling general GEM. It was initiated in 2013 in the Ministry of Economy. It is being updated every year, and we academicians are also a part of this process. We see that there are benefits when we studied through this model, the agenda of climate topic, and to understand this notion better, now we will have the speech of Dr. Bassi. Today he was not able to speak online, but he has video.
Hello, my name is Andrea Bassi. In providing this presentation, and my intervention focuses on the role of systems analysis or systems thinking more in general in supporting climate policy, both formulation and evaluation. First, I want to introduce the methodology. Systems thinking is a methodology that allows us to understand how a system works with the interactions of the components of the systems. So we want to understand how different parts interact to shape so population growth, economic development, but also the growth of emissions possibly over time and the growing impacts of climate change. Then we use system dynamics very often to quantify these impacts. And so not only to understand better how the system works, but also to start and quantifying what the consequences are of action and inaction. Now, if we take a systemic approach to the economy that is represented in this diagram, we get how the economy works. And what we see here specifically, the interaction in economic activity, that is GDP, and consumption use of natural resources, as well as the extent to which GDP is invested in capital, it generates jobs, and now capital, our infrastructure, growing GDP and capital, and therefore more activity. And for instance, if we consume too much of our natural capital, we will see scarcity in natural resources, a reduction in ecosystem services, and therefore productivity will decline. At the same time, if we consume too much, and we consume too much energy that maybe is fossil-based, we will generate more emissions, in addition to the loss of carbon sequestration we get from natural capital reductions. Now, these may create air pollution and or due to climate vulnerability that will give us negative impacts on damage to infrastructure, so depreciation of capital, but also at the same time, negative impacts on human health, which goes on to affect our labor productivity and therefore the economy overall. So I mentioned this just to say that we can use systems thinking to understand what is happening in reality and to integrate knowledge, connect the dots between economics, environmental science, social studies, and so on and so forth. And climate change is no exception. Climate change is a systemic issue, and as we have seen, it has systemic consequences. So if we start from climate impacts resulting from growing vulnerability, the events, extreme events happening more often and being stronger, we see impacts on capital, we see impacts on people, human health, we see impacts on nature. So the whole system is impacted by climate change. So if we want to investigate a bit more what these impacts are and why action is needed, we can use a systems model. In this case, you see the green economy model, just as one example of many. Is the level of ambition to reduce emissions. Then we can use models to move from a target to the estimation of the investment required and the impacts on greenhouse gas emissions. And these are the graphs you see here at the center. We have different scenarios with emission reduction trajectories. With higher ambition, of course, we get more reductions. And here at the bottom, we see an estimate of the cost for achieving that emission reduction. Now, the cost is not necessarily negative, not a negative connotation, because when we invest, we also create jobs. In this case, we reduce air pollution. And so you see here on the right side, a variety of indicators that are impacted by these investments. So we have more access to energy and energy services, maybe more reliable energy services. We may actually be able to reduce energy spending, so we free up resources for other types of investments. We may actually increase forest cover and biomass, and so that brings us more ecosystem services. And all these indicators together are then responsible for changes in GDP growth. What we might actually see that if you account for this multitude of indicators, GDP may actually grow higher if we reduce emissions because of these many co-benefits for the economy that emission reductions interventions are creating. Now let's move over to adaptation instead. How can we take a systemic approach to analyze adaptation options? Well, first of all, we normally start with analysis of climate hazards. So what are the risks that climate change poses? Could be landslides, could be floods, could be other types of risks. And we look at a map at the country level or even at the local level to see if there is any area that is at risk. And if you identify these areas that are at risk, then we go on to look at what of infrastructure they use for personal use as well as for economic purposes that may be impacted by climate risks. So what is the percentage or kilometers of roads that are within an area at risk of floods, riverine floods, and landslides? Same could be said for buildings, power generation capacity, transmission lines. And if you expand the analysis, once we know what is at risk, if we start looking at climate forecasts that consider monthly precipitation, temperature, then we're able to see what is the actual amount of infrastructure that could be at risk any given month under different climate scenarios. And this is exactly the input we can use for the green economy model. As explained earlier, we can see climate change as being driven by activity that we have in the country, but also global climatic changes can be imposed on the country. And then this information allows us to determine what is the impact of climate change on the economy. So climate loss and damage, how much infrastructure do we lose? How much does it cost to fix it? And if the value is high, then we can move ahead and plan for actions, right? We can start climate-proofing roads, climate-proofing buildings, investing in power generation capacity that is less vulnerable to climate change. And with that, we can then re-affect the economy and hopefully receive higher economic growth in the future. But economic growth that is more resilient to climate change and maybe an economy that generates more benefits for everyone. So with this, I end my presentation, and I hope that you found it interesting and maybe stimulating to explore going forward the use of systems thinking or a systemic approach to understanding better the complexity of the system we live in, that being the economy or a specific sector or society and the economy of well-being, for instance, to then determine what would be appropriate actions and then assessing the performance of these actions from a mitigation adaptation point of view using a variety of indicators that are both social, economic, and environmental at the same time. Thank you for your attention, and I hope you enjoy the coming presentations as well. Thank you, everyone.
Да. Да, это такое короткое, да, то есть видео.
It was like a brief video from Dr. Andrea Bassi, who specialized deeply in this topic, and according to one of our main probably supports, which helps us to learn and at the same time develop this model. Next slide, please. Accordingly, one of the main processes of what we've been over the last 5 years working in the topic GEM, kept GEM since 2019. Then the next step was the institutionalization of this process, because prior to that, the process has been carried out by GIZ under the Ministry of Economy and Commerce, but due to the fact that there is a problem of the public bodies, government agencies, of the turnover of cadres, and this model accordingly the Kyrgyz Economic University, our university has become the basis of this process, and we have made an agreement, tripartite agreement between the Minister of Economy, our university, and GIZ for the development, and we signed this agreement that this institute, or the center, as we call it right now, Center of Economic Modeling and Analysis, has now, we will be carrying out this work. I'd like to say that the center was founded to serve as a coordinator between the three parties, because we all know that as Rakhat mentioned, for example, business, it is separated, it is doing something. The government and others are not interacted. Our center is to bridge the coordination and provide support. And accordingly, this decision, especially climatic issues, have been well-founded. Yes, there is a process as which I have told you about. And if we speak about our center, then the main mission is assistance in developing database policies for sustainable development, building and strengthening expertise, economic modeling for the especially to the academia. Also, the center works not only with the government agencies, but also with the businesses, of course, educational institutions, promoting this model. Yeah, here we can, on the diagram, imagine our role in this process under the Minister of Economy. At Commerce, there is an interdepartmental working group, which is directly responsible for the model of green economy. Our center, as a research institute, it should, together with the working group, develop these measures, which will be modeling, align and confirm, and when the work is done, get to the working group, the sittings, and teachers should present its result to the coordination committee on the development of green economy in the Kyrgyz Republic, and it's also represented by the civil society and business association, and those are results that the sign is doing and broadcasting, and it will be presented to all of the us who are interested in it, and will be taken to other policymakers in this area. And accordingly, we know that the direct interaction between the Minister of Economy and due to the fact that these main programs, these are committed by the government, we are building on it. We're developing these measures. I would like to know that not only the Minister of Economy, we have the opportunity to work with other government agencies, in particular Minister of Natural Resources, which is responsible directly for the environmental area, natural resources, and accordingly, it will be also benefit from our developments. Also, one of the main message is that the center should not just do research and promote modeling, but at the same time form expert potential, a local one, because with the first launch of the center, there was in the future, there'll be trainings on modeling, so which we need to build the capacity, our capacity, because it is required for our country. Whether we are planning within the activity, the development of training programs, introduction of the system dynamics. This is an interesting tool which can be used not only in the green economy, but in all other spheres at all levels of education, a bachelor's degree, master's degree, and postgraduate, and it will be in depth with using the systemic dynamics and make some focus, and of course support of others, teachers of this in this area. And also important item of our center is that we're also seeking to bridge relations with our business sector to provide the services. And this area, it's a kind of a need. Where we provide services. It'll be good for both business and on the other hand, this is sustainability for our ECG. And one of the final, maybe main important elements, this is the fact that we are seeking to develop regional cooperation. As Rakhat said, the topic of climate, it's not only for Kyrgyzstan, but also for all. And we are already negotiating with the analogous institutes in neighboring countries, and we are carrying out dialogue so that we could jointly develop some project proposals and applications, provide some recommendations, results, which will cover all our region. For us, it is also a very important area, and we are trying to show ourselves. We somehow are glad that we are attending this seminar. So we are seeking the full institutionalization, regional cooperation, and not only across the region, but within the country, for the expert community to interact. We are open for cooperation, and we will be happy to see you in our center. And we would like to just for information, I would like to say that on the 3rd of July, we will have our official opening ceremony, the round table on the basis of the Kyrgyz State University. If you're interested, just attend and discuss, and we will be developing the list of measures, potential ones for the next year. We will be planning them, modeling and focusing for the government agencies. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much, Saikal. I think it's a very interesting presentation on the modeling, and I'm sure that those who have a lot of good things can be done with using dynamics. I would like to give the floor to Mrs. Maral Saganalieva, Director of the Silk Road Research Center and Coordinator of the AVR, International University of Alliance of Higher Educational Institutions of Kyrgyzstan for Sustainable Development, one of the alliances that have been grown on their own initiatives. Maybe Maral will tell us how many it started as a volunteer, not as a project, without support of donors, without support of government agencies, but as an independent initiative of the Higher Education Institution of Kyrgyzstan. Hello. As it was introduced, my name is Maral Saganalieva. In my presentation, in order to show the significance of the academia and research cooperation in climate policy, I will be acting not as a director of the research center Silk Road and the coordinator, but I'm also chairperson of the board of the alliance. I'm an expert at FAO, GIZ. I worked in many other projects, and I am a member of many interdepartmental working groups. We have a lot of climatic issues that we set, gender issues, biodiversity, safety, security. I think it'll be interesting, and I'll try to integrate all of that where we're working. Now, let me make a preface why I got into the science, because working as an expert community, you started developing a lot of different strategic documents. So we defined that we need scientifically founded documents. We're developing strategies. For example, yesterday we had hearing on biodiversity or safety. Next week, we will go on gender. We see that we need the science, and therefore I had a big desire to come to science, and I'm thankful that I have such an opportunity to promote this. It is very important to understand that the scientifically about the decisions provide long-lasting perspectives. Right now, I'm working in the rural center. Why? I worked in KO. Prior to that, I worked in the Academy of Public Administration. But studying the International University of Alato, I noticed a big potential in what? The fact is that Alato has a really big potential because we work on in the area of environment. We can see only one-sided view and resolve all the environmental issues. But Alato has also medical faculty. They have an IT. They have psychology, journalism, and right now in Alato we're trying to get integrated everything all of it. Why? Because all our climate risks, all challenges concern virtually the human health. When we talk about environmental issues, they are not perceived. But when we get to the local community, but when we speak of the health and see this connection, people start responding to that. They start getting understand how environment can indirectly impact their health. And in a lot of work has been done on identifying a lot of issues as a result of the environmental pollution. We are trying to integrate them, digitalize. We have one of the best IT departments. A lot has been done digital solutions. One of them was done 5-6 years ago, and they updated. They invented drones. Students and teachers they can see the plants in a very risky zones. It's very interesting. They can zone the soil, and in a lot of we decided that it will be a really good platform to integrate all subsequently data which are available plus research and get and make it as a good policy of it. We as a rural center, we are trying to also develop interdisciplinary research across Central Asian universities, not only across Central Asia, because Silk Road is a really long history. There's a lot of countries out there. We are trying to develop coordination with China. We have a really good platform, which is called UNESCO Silk Road Universities. There are not only universities, but also agencies, universities that work on many issues along the Silk Way. We are developing, together with them, joint projects we can develop, but also international academia exchange. Last week we talked the academy says that we do not have good data because of good data on water resources, for example. They have the data is of 2017-18 because that time the project was funded. Further up, they do not have. Okay, we are research scholars, so we are to make a good analysis, but cannot make a forecast and cannot see further things. And they address to us since I'm head of board outside address to several students, postgraduate students abroad. They asked for assistance. They said that they won't have very good grants, but they have to involve private sector or NGOs, and we were good opportunity for them. It turns out that they were awarded a grant plus 50% of grant will be funding the private sector to pilot their work. You see, what an opportunity of work is occurring. I don't see something which is we also have the support of a scientific initiative. We have a kind of not a challenge or no, but we are resolving it. And the thing is that we understand that in the universities, there is a very high load for the teachers, and to involve them in actively into science is very hard, very hard. And we understand that, but sometimes it happens that, for example, the Minister of Economy can just ask us, or Minister of Natural Resources, ask us to work for 2 years as experts. We as experts of green islands, we can orient, probably if we take a scholar from the university who have the working plan, it's very difficult. And it is that we are universal experts. We read their works and then we provide their results. Is it fair? No, it is not fair, right? And that is really good. Therefore, we would like to make sure that there is some flexibility in our scientific, academic university. We would like to figure out how we can get adapted really fast, because we do not have much time to plan. We need to make decisions really fast, but we have science. When I made a speech in Ashgabat and Central Asian a conference on climate change in Ashgabat, we also talked about why the science or academia cannot, because it has their own legal framework and the working training plan. And yesterday, the National Academy of Science to ask for to collect 50 pages for some specially protected zone. They were asking for the permission for half a year. You see, our academy is so limited, and therefore we need to work with that. And of course, we would like to hold the scientific research trainings. They are starving right now because there are requirements scientifically founded. They cannot the scientific methodology and synchronized with the practical methodology, because therefore there is an opportunity to learn from each other. The Green Alliance is trying to learn from the academy. Academy is trying to learn from experts. Beginning with this year, from April, the overview. It used to be 2017. It was under the leadership of OSCE, but since this year it is under the ALATO, and I am coordinating it. This overview, because there is a good opportunity to involve the educational sector directly in the issues of climatic policy and climatic issues. Therefore, here we're also trying to make a contribution into the development of the green economy and sustainable development, ensure the interaction. This year, we've managed to go to Ojalabat and Marine and receive the very good proposals, because they from the top they got the structure that they need to introduce all the materials on the green economy and sustainable development, and they are open right now for to make sure that all issues on green economy are shared, and they can open their doors. We have memorandums, we have this is the overview. It's not that we are not an institute as it is. We do not have a seal. It's like a legal platform. Everybody can click an application and become the member of the overview. And we are thinking now how to make it better, because the university would like to see the paper on the basis of which they would like to make the developments. And therefore, we're working on that and see how we can institutionalize this. And because there is a good opportunity, they are looking at us from abroad. But I made a speech either in Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. They do not have such platforms. They were so surprised to see how the private sector and civil society and university can easily work together. And therefore, the exit to the region is also, we have alliance of universities for the green, and it may have the regional nature and regional scale. And also would like to say that that 6, 7, what we have managed to do with the research center Silk Road. First of all, we everywhere outreach. We have the scholars out here when I studied in England and studied justice theories. Just the interesting theories. I'd like to broaden my knowledge. There is such a theory of constructivism.
Yes.
The theory where people itself decide decides to develop its own policy. And of course, my professor said, prove that your country fits constructivism, and the unit is such a special platform. And I was so happy that in our constitution, in the preamble, it says that we must live in harmony with nature. We already made the message of somehow environmental balance. In other words, we live in UN. We have participated in the conference in 2023 in New York, and we spoke to indigenous people without traditional knowledge, without your traditional skills. We won't survive. Technologies do not give such opportunity, and we are already carrying the positive environmental message. And the all expert platforms, I am trying to say that we have this, we just need to realize it. And the main thing that it's again, we forget a little bit that Kyrgyzstan has as a mountain country, small one. The climatic conditions are different. They have a really big potential. 20 years ago, the scientific research works, they wrote that mountains will be an oasis, and the mountains will be providing its own area, and people will be getting adapted really fast. We are participating in many conferences and see that if we look at the temperature for 40, 50 years, in many places where the mountains are close, and for example, in the red, in Issyk-Kul, the temperature has not changed. It has, on the contrary, it has become cooler. There's a lot of issues that are not correlated with other data, and therefore we need to take into account this. Another main thing is that we have a mountain in the cities. We very confuse it with the European economy, but we are a mountainous country. Where we made a list of 150 meters of the simple agricultural crops. It used to grow differently because elevation. If difference is 150 meters, this difference plays a big role. Therefore, it's not an expert approach; it's a scientific approach. And really, during the lab research, they saw that thanks to these differences of the elevations, it plays a big role. That we need to pay attention to that. That's it. One of the electoral business. In order to see the whole biodiversity of Russia, you need to travel from Vladivostok to Moscow, 6,000 kilometers. And you stand for 1 year or day. You can climb to the mountains and see the whole diversity and see it even better than in Russia. And our diversities are well.
And of course, we're experts. We have done and written very good scientific works, so we applied them. Organic agriculture, we need renewable energy program to restore forests and forest ecosystems. We all have that, have all of that there. This project are starting to work from different angles, but for them there is no good scientific data. We start, but we encounter shortage of knowledge, data, and our plans are broken. It's very important to understand that it should start with education. I work with the students, many students. I noticed that the students, they can run their studies and research thanks to this available strategic documents. I mean, it's already written what we need, and there are gaps because developing and drafting many laws, we made the current situation analysis. If students could learn, we are talking about financial literacy, about digital literacy, but sometimes we forget about legal literacy. Unless we can well read legal documents, we cannot promote them and see gaps there. Therefore, it would be desirable for the universities, those who are related to climate, they should be able to develop that. Be desirable to work with all the disciplines related to green economy. I see big potential in green economy and green modeling, and green modeling promoted by our university is not limited. If you have more knowledge, your own ideas, we can add them. I mean, integrate them and see more scenarios. And we need to learn, starting from high school, how to work with biodiversity. For instance, we had the case. Now Green Alliance is the member of Eco Council of Mayor's Office in Bishkek. They got their World Bank money, 30% for science, but there are no researchers except for the National Academy of Sciences. And the National Academy of Sciences, they explained just to track. They want to track the movement of snow leopards. They do it, they see the environmental corridors, but they only collect, but not analyze the data. We would like, anyway, to develop these issues. And when we advised in this council, our researchers, they are thinking. In our Green Alliance, we receive financial sector, I'll the Credit Bank, and they ask for good estimates. We have certification, we make estimates, but they want scientific estimates. It would be nice for the universities to have good methodology to estimate the greenhouse gases, many levels. We try to apply them as planning materials. We all have come to this green economy. We adopted it. But what about the path to come to that? All the Europe for 40 years studied bioeconomy to learn all the biological resources economically, to what extent they can restore or they cannot. And you see, they integrated so much to understand that they need this green economy, but we don't have these subjects. We don't have a geo-economy, no notion, no understanding, but it's so interesting, especially with our biodiversity. Unfortunately, we don't know the value of all that. Here, there are a lot of methodologies, concepts, approaches, and a lot of matching tools to develop, and it will be desirable to fix these issues because everything starts with education. In 1962, very good work. Social economic sixties of the century, we're still saying that we need all the time to protect biodiversity, but we're not saying, we're saying that we don't have involvement of the private sector, but it wants to use cheap resources, and the nature gives them for free, but sometimes we don't know to what extent it gives the wealth. I also made on the basis of this report, I included the methodology and developed here in Kyrgyzstan. I used the available data. Here we considered and situation. For an apple of grow, 80% of work is done by bee. Do we pay the bee for its work? Can you for pollination? Can you imagine how much money is provided by nature for free? We really want the private sector to understand the other side, not only protect biodiversity, but to enrich it, to improve it, and it will provide 2 or 3 times more social and economic benefits. There is a lot of methodologies. Thank you for your attention. So if we take you too much time. Thank you very much, Maral. It was very interesting. We appreciate your unique experience in developing a strategy, scientific one, empiric statements. Very interesting. I think there will be many questions in the course of the Q&A session. And our next speaker, Dr. Kanat Tulekeva, Deputy Director of the Institute of Public Administration of the University, Central Asian University. You know, this is one of the leading universities in Central Asia with a lot of research. Kanat Tulekeva is one of the rare microeconomists in Central Asia with the unique expertise. Therefore, we are happy, we are lucky to have Kanat here. Hello, dear colleagues. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks to the Academy organizers for the chance to be here with you to discuss these important issues related to development, analysis of the environmental and the climate change problems related to all of us. As it has been already mentioned by the director of the Academy, we are covering very interesting issues, especially in the presentations. Thank you very much. Our university is very interesting in terms of location. It is located in 3 states. We have campuses in Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, in Narin, in Karag, in Tajikistan. In Karag, there is also the Earth Sciences Department, and we have also 2 schools, graduate school and high school for development, and part of our institute. We have also Institute for Development of Mountain Communities and the department dealing with cultural development and humanitarian development. In addition, to have the School of Professional Ongoing Education in all Central Asian countries, in Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, also in Afghanistan. They still operate. These are short-term courses, basically for those who want to learn English, methods, computer literacy, accounting. Now this is the school which is being transformed, developing new short courses on the current issues. A few words about what programs are covered by our university to analyze the environment. This is the bachelor's level, first of all, in Narin. In Tikali, the campus has not been launched. It may happen in a few years. This is our department on environmental issues. Earth, natural scientists are there. They study geology, soil sciences, analysis of water contamination, air pollution, sphere glaciology. Why is it in Korok and Kyrgyzstan? This is a very big matter because this zone where nearby there are big massives of glaciers in Central Asia, which have a very big impact an influence on the climate change for the next decades in the region. We have big scholars working there, and we're happy that we've got students who will basically in future be the core of what you said. We need here to have good labs, and we're happy that we were able to preserve and support this training program. Development school, I will not sure about all the projects. These are projects where I have been participating personally for the last few years. We implement much more projects, but it will take a lot of time to share about all of them. I will share about the 4 projects. This is the Sustainable Development Program in Asia. But the main donor here is the German government, and within this project, our component is what we create network working with the governments of OSCE countries. Our main contribution was that we were able within 3 years, previous 3 years, to collect for 3 times representatives of national governments, open summer schools, and their representatives of environmental ministry, transport, and economy from their head offices came to the summer schools in Kyrgyzstan. In 23, we were able to take everyone to Turkey, to Istanbul. And last year, we had this summer school in Astana. This is a kind of a closed event without, for instance, representatives of the civil society or academia. But thanks to the fact that we were able to work with European affiliated scholars, providing climate analysis of changes, they shared how this knowledge should be applied in the public policy. Because when you come to an official, explain all these things, he does not understand anything. He should be explained. For instance, if you repair a road, how a repaired road can affect the environment. Very simply, the speed of the transport of the vehicles increases, and you carry people and cargo faster, use less gasoline, and you win. And these things can how to improve responsibility of businesses, green finances, all these details should be explained to the officials. We have on the website CIPA, Central Asia .org, where we publish all our materials twice a year. We around the webinars. By the way, I invite you to participate our webinars. We announce them through our network, and we had the contest for the best policy brief, and Rakhat change the city could use the issues of sustainability. This is a new project, Green Deal. We are part of a big look within this Central Asia. We present to you, so we are able to you can see it presents, and it was difficult to explain to you partner. We have two budgets, but it's really small. Education universities, every university has to develop two new models and adapt to the existing models, but now we have to do 4 models to apply. That is good. Business cooperation, we have some ideas. We work now with one company. By the form we want to sign the agreement. This is the company which provides services of charging stations for e-vehicles in Bishkek. They have in Osh, such a station in Osh, but station important is the to help them, analysis on energy, electricity in winter, in latter, sometimes in summer, sometimes there are long lines, sometimes there are no lines. There are taxi drivers coming from Bishkek, but we need to know the dynamics, which affects the demand and how to adapt. And they built new wind stations, power stations, not big ones. They print apt for us. This experience is also very interesting. So, I mean, we know home to the big role belongs the manager of this project, and he used to work in Russia. Now he's one of the managers of the university. Thanks to him, From the first time we didn't manage, we applied, was not, but failed. Then we updated our application proposal, and the second time we got the finance. This is a long project for 3.5 years till 27. We have different lot of activities. This is our website of the project. In the website of each university, there will be a separate page, Greenville Center, where we will publish all the information related to the project. One of the projects in the second phase is SDG Nexus. Second phase, funded by DED. They have the exit program, like Pyramid Excellence Center. I'm happy that the main university is a University of Sabyrbekov, and in Germany, where I graduated from. Rakhat also studied there. This is a very active university with extensive activities. They collaborate with 2 centers from South Africa. There are several universities in Central Asia. We, Nazarbayev University in Tiana, with which we are collaborating 2 projects. As you can see, we have a specific trend, what Erasmus loves and what the German government loves, funds. Many projects, they prefer to sponsor many sided multilateral projects, and Gulnara was in the first phase of the project. In the second phase, we have 2 more participants. Amelia Bigaim, she comes to work from the 2nd of July, and we have another participant. Please raise your hand. She also starts working with us in July. They will make research, cooperation with scientific tutors, managers from Germany. Big role in this project is played by Professor Patrick, our friend and colleague, with whom we have been collaborating with in many projects. Another trend is that you need to recommend yourself as a good partner, which is useful. And you collaborate in one project, then you switch to another, and your network is expanded a little bit. As I mentioned, I can give you about the list of about 10 projects where our university participates, but I can tell you that for 5 years, the number of the projects tripled. 5-6 years ago, we had a different situation. I can say that the climate agenda is becoming, among the scholars and academia, a big notion with more focus and attention. Now the situation in the world has changed so much in the environment of global unsustainability, etc. But now we are oriented to EU. But there is also the desire of our Chinese colleagues to cooperate. I think in Japan or Korea, there are also opportunities to work, meaning working in one line. We should not forget that the world is huge. We need to look at all the parties when we change our system or prepare proposals. We need to orient not only to EU, although it provides a lot of money to continue in the future, but nobody knows to what extent it will last. But we also have national priorities, academic budgets in the country and in the region, which is not sufficient, not enough. Even, for instance, Nazarbayev University consumes a lot of money, but there is a shortage of money even in the rich countries. we need to think and raise public discussions because the climate will continue changing. And there are practical steps, there are international donors, but there is also a good mind. And this is important for all of us, and this is our future to which we should be better adapted with better knowledge, collaborating with each other. Thank you very much.